Now let's start working on the JavaScript for our Navbar. And before we do that, I'm worried about the contrast here. I actually want to use a darker gray. And so I'm actually going to specify a hex code for that. Let's just go 333333, which is a darker gray. Okay, so that's good, and the black still shows up against that pretty well. So for the Navbar JavaScript, we really need two different things. We need a piece of code that's going to update this Navbar based on whether the user is logged in or not. And then we also need a piece of code that handles clicking on these buttons. So if I am logged in, I just want to show logout, and I want to be able to click on logout and be logged out. And then if I'm not logged in, then I want to show sign up and sign in. And if I click on sign up, I want to get a registration dialog. And if I want to click sign in, then I want to get a login dialog. And so we're going to need to stub some stuff before we do the JavaScript for this. So let me go ahead and create loadable content for a register dialog and for a login dialog. So let's start with that. And I'm going to right click and say new PHP file, register content. And let me start with the Navbar content. And before I do anything else, let me get rid of this stuff because I don't need that for this project, calculator constants and so on. And then let me copy all of the stuff from here down. And paste that in here. And get rid of the CSS for now. And for the HTML, I'm just going to have a div box with a title, please create your account, and then I'll just put stub for this. And then the JavaScript here is going to be a function that defines a method to call to show this dialog. So let's call that register. And this is JavaScript again. And then what I want to do is just get this thing here, so I need an ID for it. So I'm going to get that thing. And I'm going to make constants for these in a while, but for now I'm just going to hard code them and come back and clean that up. Okay, so that will just have a dialog, and then I'll set the options for that later. And then I'm going to right click and then copy that. Actually refactor copy and call this login content in the same folder. And then this one is going to be a login dialog. And then this will be please sign in to your account. Call that login. Okay, and then I'll bother with the CSS later, but for now, this should go ahead and show a dialog when I call login in JavaScript. So in my Navbar content, I want to set some JavaScript so that when the user clicks on sign in, it shows the login dialog. It loads the content and then shows the login dialog. So let's do that first. So attaching the method to that button, or this link, span, whatever, that has to happen when the document is ready. So I'm going to specify a ready function that gets the login button, and once again I'll make a constant for that, and then adds a click handler, and then if the user clicks, then I want to load the new content, and then this is in Navbar content, and I want to load login content, which is in the same folder. So actually, this is being loaded from a page that's forward-facing, so I actually think I need assets includes. So assets includes login content.php, because this is using Ajax, so it's fetching it relative to the page that's currently being displayed, which is just CIS295p/share. So then assets includes login content relative to that root path. And then the function that gets called when the content has been loaded is just going to call that login function that was defined in the JavaScript and login content. So this content defines the function, this content calls the function after it's been loaded, and then for the register button we want to do the same thing. Except we want to call register button, or find the register button, and then load register content, and then call the register function. Okay, so those two things should be live now. Let's see if it worked. Okay, so I'm going to click on sign in, and there's my login dialog. Get rid of that old one, and then if I click sign up, please create your account. So here's my registration dialog. So we'll come back and add the content for that. And then the other method that I want is update Navbar, and I'm going to call that every time my login status changes, not just when the document is loaded. So I'm not going to put that in this ready function. I'm going to define a separate function that I'm going to explicitly call. So function update Navbar. And what this wants to do is it wants to find out whether the user is currently logged in or not. And in order to do that, we're going to have to make an Ajax call. So $, and I don't need to pass any params in because it's going to be on the current session. So basically, when the user is logged in, there's going to be a session object, and the session object is going to have a username property. And so I just need to make sure that the action page that's handling the request attaches to the same session that the index page is loading. So you'll see how that works. So I'm just going to say $.get, because I don't need to pass in anything. And then the path relative to the index page is assets, actions, and then get username. And this is going to be an Ajax function that returns the username value of the session object. And then when it returns that result, what I want to do with it is first I want to change what gets displayed. Actually, Oh, so this actually does have to be inside of that function there. Actually, no, that's not inside the ready object. That's here. Okay. And then Shift Tab to unindent. All right, so this creates a ready function that gets called when the document's ready. This just defines an update navbar function globally so that we can call it anytime the login status changes. And then what we want to do is look at this data, and it's either going to return a piece of text, which is the username, or just an empty piece of text, so an empty string. So we'll say if data equal empty string, then we want to show, so this means the user isn't logged in, so we want to show this sign in and sign up and hide logout and username. So login button show and register button dot show, and then username we're going to hide and log out. We're going to hide. So that's if the user isn't logged in. And if the user is logged in, then we're going to, actually let me start by copying all this stuff. And we're basically going to do the exact opposite. So this will be hide, show, and then in addition, we want to set the inner text of this username span to have the current username. So let's do that before we show it. And actually, we can chain that together. No. So let's show that, set the text to data, and then show it. And for completeness, let's go ahead and do that here too. So we'll just explicitly clear the text. Okay, so now we need to define this get username script, and this is going to be a really simple script. So we'll create a new PHP file called get username. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is attach to the current session and then that will create a session object that will either have a username property set or not. So we'll say if is set $ under session so if the username key is set in the session object, I'm going to echo session sub username key. So if there's a username, then that's going to be returned. Otherwise, I'm returning nothing, which is just going to be an empty piece of text. So this username key, I'm going to put in globals. And let me go ahead and create a new PHP file, share globals. And later on, I'm going to make this a constant on a user class. But for now, I'm just going to put it here. Const username key equals username. And then in get username, I need to include that. And then this is in I'm in actions now, so relative to that is dot dot slash includes slash share globals. All right, so this should work. Let me go ahead and try it. I'm going to load this directly, so I'm going to pretend to be Ajax now. I'm going to go to share assets, actions, get username.php. And if I look at the network, I see the request headers proper, and then response failed to load response data. Response headers content length 0, so that's just an empty body. So that's correct. And then later on, after we have registration working, we'll be able to see what it looks like when you're logged in. So now, in my Navbar content, this will be live when I call update Navbar. And so I'm going to do that after I make these buttons live. So we'll call update Navbar. And then I'll also call update Navbar when the user has logged in or registered. So if I go back here and hit reload, right, so I just have sign up and sign in showing. Login isn't shown. Now if I was logged in, let's go ahead and see what that is going to look like. So I'm going to create a dummy login here, make this public facing, new PHP file, dummy login, and this is going to do session start, and it's going to set $_under session sub username key equal mark, and I'm going to require once my assets includes share globals. So when I load this page, it will give me the effect of being logged in. So share dummy login.php. So now I should be logged into the session. And sure enough, I see username mark and logout link. So when I click on logout, I'm going to want to destroy the session and also clear the username. But I'm going to put that in a user class, and so I'm going to hold off on that. So the username key, that's going to be a static constant on the class, and the logout method will be on the class, and so on. So I'm going to skip that for now. I did notice one other thing though, which is let's do a dummy logout. New PHP file. And this is going to do session start and set $_ under session. So username key to empty. Actually, let's unset that entirely. Unset that. And that's in assets and includes share constant, share globals. Actually, this should be share constants. I don't know why I called that share globals. It's global constants, but I'm going to refactor, rename share globals to be share constants, and click refactor. And that automatically changes the file name and also changes that reference and also this reference, and basically any reference, it goes through and it updates that name. So that's really useful. And so that will simulate logging out for now. And I'm going to go ahead and call that. And then go back. And I get sign up and sign in again. Now, I did notice one thing. So I'm seeing a little flashing here. So let's call dummy login again. And then go back. See, it briefly displays all of the things at the top and then hides the ones that shouldn't be visible. And that's not exactly what I want. So what I want to do is start with all of them invisible, and then the ones get shown when that update navbar gets called. And so let me just do that right now in navbar content. And I'm going to add a hidden class. Which is just display none. And then in my HTML, I'm going to add that to everything that I don't want to be visible on load. So that's hidden. And that, and that, and that. Oh. And then, rather than calling show and hide, instead of show, I'm going to call not match regex. I'm going to call remove class hidden. And then instead of hide, I'm going to call add class hidden. Okay, so try it now. All right, so let's call the dummy logout and hit reload. Localhost share, oops, CIS295P share dummy logout, and then reload. Okay. So let's see what we're getting in our classes. I'm going to inspect, and here's my toolbar. That looks okay, so let's look at the span. Display block. It still says hidden. Oh, okay. So that's not working right. So I'm logged out, so sign up should work. But this is still hidden. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here in the JavaScript. And I want the code for my Nav Bar is probably here. Yep. So it's a base64 encoded data URI, but it shows this correctly here. And then I'm going to put a breakpoint right there and right there. Okay, so login button. Login button is not hidden. Should have been. So here's my login button. Oh, yeah, I put it in the wrong place. That was the problem. I meant to put it in the span. That was the problem. Here we go. Okay. I'm sorry, not the ID. Meant to put that in the class. I did this one. Get rid of that. And then I did this one. So I did these two right, but I put the hidden in the wrong place for these two. So let's try it now. Get rid of these breakpoints, continue, reload. Okay, so now it's showing sign up, sign in, and then dummy login. Showing the right thing without showing the old stuff there. So that's what I want. Try that one more time. Go back to dummy logout. Good. So that should be it for this video. In the next video, we'll start fleshing out the register dialog.